Marshal Brown was referred to as the enforcer.
His capture is the cops' top priority.
With Marshal Brown, we were prepared for a possibility of a shootout.
Go down, put your hands up.
But this fugitive is a master at eluding police, and he won't go down without a fight. Criminals sometimes try to escape from justice. This is the story of how one man almost got away with it. July 3rd, 1977. Horace Morrison settles in for a quiet evening at his Taylorsville, North Carolina home. He has no idea there's a price on his head.
How long has it been going on?
Morrison is about to testify against a local gang member. It's a decision that will cost him dearly. The trigger man is 19-year-old Marshall Lee Brown. He's already a veteran drug runner and hired thug. Brown is paid $50 to make sure Morrison keeps his mouth shut.
I know that they wanted him dead. Now they made the wrong people mad. They decided that he was a liability, a threat to them. I mean, that's the rules.
You mean the time I went over the hill down in that one?
Brown immediately makes his escape, heading some 350 miles north to Washington, D.C., where he plans to lay low until things cool down.
I kept the weapon and won't sell it. And the rest of them about their own ways. You know, the code of silence don't say nothing.
But someone in the gang breaks that code and talks to police. 2 weeks after Morrison's murder, Brown hears a knock on the door.
I just snatched the door open, and it was 2 United States Marshals.
On November 17th, 1977, Marshall Lee Brown is convicted of second-degree murder for the contract killing of Horace Morrison. He's sentenced to life in prison.
I thought it was, well, that's the end of Marshall Brown.
It's a bitter pill to swallow, and Brown can't stop thinking about who to blame for putting him behind bars.
I'm wondering who could have betrayed me. You know what I'm saying? Because it was more than one person involved, and I'm wondering why didn't it come to me?
Notorious Polk Youth Institution in Raleigh, North Carolina. Many of Polk's inmates are hardcore criminals, and the cell block is ruled by violence.
Kill or be killed, if it come down to it.
Brown decides he'll do what it takes to survive on the inside, but one way or another, he's eventually going to get out.
It's better to be dead than spend the rest of life in prison.
Escape from Polk is difficult, but Brown is willing to be patient. He spends his days lifting weights, practicing martial arts, and learning all he can about wilderness survival.
I think Marshal Brown was going to do everything that he possibly could to be 100% prepared for the journey he was fixing to take.
As the years roll by, Brown establishes himself as a model prisoner.
Good day, officer. What's going on?
After 16 years behind bars, his good behavior earns him a transfer to a minimum security facility in Charlotte.
Marshal Brown is basically a very intelligent individual. He knows how to manipulate others and himself. He can have the discipline, if you will, to get what he desires.
Brown manages to get himself enrolled in a prison work release program. Each morning, he's transported to a county construction project in downtown Charlotte. Brown is trusted to work without the supervision of corrections officers. It's an opportunity he can't resist. The morning of April 12th, 1996, after more than 19 years in prison, Marshal Brown walks off the job site and disappears. By the time prison officials get word that Brown's missing, the escapee is already out of the area. He eventually makes his way to the woods outside Charlotte.
Well, after I had made my way to out of the immediate area of danger, you might say, I got on my knees and kissed the ground and spent my first night outdoors under the stars.
He was going to remain on the top priority list until he was captured.
Rucky Nance was a lieutenant with the North Carolina Department of Corrections Fugitive Recovery Team back in 1996.
We're going to check every lead we get, no matter how minor, no matter how insignificant it may seem. We're going to turn over every rock, every stone.
Nance is surprised to find a note in Brown's prison locker, apologizing for his escape. And in a warning to any would-be captors, Brown writes, "Whatever will be, will be."
The note in the locker would conclude to the same thing that he was going to do.
Made up my mind that there was no way I would want to let them catch me alive.
Brown knows he's got to stay below the radar. He's the subject of a statewide manhunt, and his mugshot's been on the local news. Brown gets a tent and a supply of food from an old friend. He spends most of his time hiding out deep in the North Carolina woods, drawing on his Army training and the wilderness survival skills he learned in prison. Brown has a portable scanner to monitor police activity. He hopes to get a warning if the cops move into his area.
In a way, it's so stressful. It was more stressful than even during the time. You see, because you can't go to sleep sound because you got to keep your ears open. You got to use your nose to try to smell people. You know what I mean? You got to just, he's on the edge. Yeah, it's about like a deer in deer season.
Brown wants to move about 40 miles north to the small town of Statesville, where he can be close to members of his old gang. He spends the next few nights traveling through the woods under cover of darkness, hoping to avoid detection. He's careful not to use a flashlight when moving near populated areas.
We called it night eyes. We didn't do the night vision stuff they didn't have, or it was just coming into being, should I say. So they trained us how to just be able to use your senses to see in the dark anyway.
Brown makes it to the Statesville area and sets up his tent outside of town. He feels relatively safe hiding out in the woods, but as winter approaches, it's time for a change.
It can be depressing, because it's sitting there, and you can only do so much.
Human nature. You can only stay in the woods so long. You've got to have contact. You've got to have food, clothing, and shelter at some point.
Brown didn't break out of prison just to make friends. He wants to get back in the drug game and make some fast money. Less than 1 week after his escape, Brown hooks up with some of his former gang in Statesville, North Carolina.
The thing was to work with them and earn enough funds and then, leave the country.
Brown goes back to work as a drug runner and hired muscle.
Marshall Brown was referred to as the enforcer. If someone in the drug business was delinquent or didn't pay for their drugs, then Marshall Brown would be sent out to collect, and if necessary, kill those individuals for not doing their part.
It was a trade that he was very familiar with, and he was able to plug and play right back into it.
Along with the easy money comes an increased risk of capture. Brown keeps a constant lookout for police.
I can't relax. And you gotta suspect everything. You got to, minute after minute. Even if you think you have somewhere trying to have a good time or drink a few beers.
And if the cops ever get him in a corner, Brown's prepared to fight back. He's known to carry a MAC-10 machine pistol with a 32-round clip. And he carries a small cube of pure heroin, part of a grim plan of last resort to make sure he's never taken alive.
That was my suicide package. If I got boxed in and couldn't elude or evade, I was just going to eat it. And I know that I would feel no pain after that.
One of the most dangerous individuals you can confront is someone that's ready and willing to die. There's no bargaining, there's no negotiation. As you were them, unfortunately.
Brown's activity has him moving in and out of known drug areas around North Carolina. He works mostly at night, taking extra care to avoid any contact with police.
We were unaware that there was a prison escapee possibly in the Statesville area. We had no idea who Marshall Brown was.
Just a few weeks after escaping from prison, Brown's making a routine drug run for a Statesville dealer.
I look up and it's a blue light behind me. So I'm saying, ooh, wow. Okay.
Brown figures he's being pulled over for a minor traffic violation. Even so, He knows he can't risk an interaction with police.
Most any officer, if you can't produce identification, they're going to run your name, date of birth. If they're not satisfied, they're going to bring you in, fingerprint you, and they're going to find out who you are.
I stop, but I don't turn the engine off. And he gets out. By the time he gets to the back end of the car, I take off.
He heads for a familiar neighborhood as another squad car joins the chase.
Usually when people try to evade the police in a vehicle, they are trying to get back to their home turf, so they have a better chance of escaping. And that's exactly what he did.
Brown jumps a curb and drives through a yard, outmaneuvering the cops. Just when it looks like he's getting away, a concerned citizen tries to run him off the road.
He tried to do like a race car drive. You know how they do when they try to force themselves out of the way? Yeah, he tried to just force me off the road.
He was definitely in the path of Marshall Brown. He could have kidnapped him, killed him, taken his vehicle, and the chase would have continued.
There was a moment right there where I thought they had me. Because unless I could think of something quick, I was in the open.
As the cops close off the alley, Marshall Brown is running out of options.
I'm thinking, what's the next step? What's the next step? He caught me right in the middle of these two buildings, and the only thing I had on my side was darkness. Well, I knew that I had to come up with something quick.
The cops close in on Brown's position. He's tracked with no place to run or hide. But as the searchlights shine in his direction, Brown lies down on the pavement, and the cops pass by without seeing him.
There was a moment right there where I thought they had me.
When the coast is clear, Brown heads back to tell his gang what happened.
When I walked in, everybody was looking at me like, wow, where you been? But I was relieved. And like I said, the rush, the heartbeat, you know what I mean? And I felt like, okay, well, that was kind of too close.
Evading and avoiding aren't Brown's only strategies for dodging the law. He tries to keep a low profile and blend in with the general public. He uses various aliases and even disguises to minimize his chances of being recognized.
A couple of times, I used a wig.
And Brown wears long-sleeve shirts to hide the distinctive yin-yang tattoo on his right forearm.
Sometimes disguises don't hold up under scrutiny, so it's a proper time to use it. For me, it was like twilight hours, where it's just, almost dark.
I don't have your money.
December 28th, 1996. A Statesville patrol officer responds to a minor disturbance.
One of our officers stopped a vehicle that was driven by a female that was actually in some type of an argument with a large black male wearing dreadlocks. He was actually walking beside a vehicle, and they were shouting back and forth.
When the officer intervenes, he has no way of knowing the dreadlocked man is an escaped murderer.
When he stopped the vehicle, the male person, who was later determined to be Marshall Brown, walked away, and the officer spoke to the female.
Evening, miss.
The woman identifies herself as Pamela Lewis and says the dreadlocked man is her boyfriend, Robert Jackson. The officer makes sure Lewis is okay. Then he drives down the street to talk to her boyfriend.
That stop had no idea who the suspect was, because the crime wasn't being committed right then, so he would have had no reason to chase him down.
When the patrol car finally drives off, Brown makes his way out of the area. It's getting late, and he's got other business to attend to. In fact, in just a few short hours, he'll commit a crime that will shock the residents of this small town. At around 5 a.m., Marshall Brown is headed to a South Statesville neighborhood to do a drug deal.
I was going down there with about half a pound of crack.
The meeting is to take place in a van parked near the railroad tracks.
It was a van used for the use of crack cocaine and illegal activities.
Brown climbs in the van and takes a seat across from Stephen Calhoun. According to police, Brown and Calhoun have some unsettled business.
Stephen Calhoun owed Marshall Brown a large sum of money for some drugs and had not paid this back.
The group is in the van for about 15 minutes when Brown suddenly pulls out a .30 caliber pistol.
What are you doing?
Without saying a word, he points the gun at Stephen Calhoun's head.
One thing the witnesses told us is that there was no fight that led up to this or any argument that led up to it. It was just out of the blue.
Come on, man. No, put the gun down.
After killing Calhoun, police say Marshall Brown turns his attention to the other people in the van. He points the gun at Calhoun's friend, David Brown, and squeezes the trigger. When the gun fails to fire, Marshall Brown uses it to beat his victim in the head.
I had to really, put it on him. It don't take much to hurt somebody if you know what you're doing.
The two other witnesses escape from the van. David Brown begs for his life.
Wait.
Don't tell anybody I was here.
With that warning, Marshall Brown leaves his victim lying on the ground and disappears into the dark.
At night, they got railroad tracks. And I could go anywhere unseen, and almost in that town, believe it or not.
He was definitely a dangerous individual, and we had to do the best we can to get him into custody. I'll be in code 11 chambers now.
Statesville Police Chief Tom Anderson was a young detective back in 1996 when he's assigned to investigate the Calhoun murder.
The body of Stephen Calhoun was still in the van when I arrived, and I arrived within 30 minutes of the actual incident taking place.
Anderson says he'll never forget that cold December morning when he first got on the scene.
At that time, the van was located about 20 to 30 feet where all this overgrown brush is now located.
When Anderson questions David Brown and the other witnesses from the van, he discovers the man he's looking for is a fugitive with a violent history.
This was a lot bigger than we knew going into it.
And Anderson learns a dispute over drug money isn't Brown's only motive for killing Calhoun. It turns out Stephen Calhoun is the man Brown believes betrayed him back in 1977 by telling police about his role in the contract killing of Horace Morrison.
Stephen Calhoun actually testified as a state witness against Marshall Brown in the 1977 case that put him in prison to begin with. So, we got two really strong motives.
The Calhoun murder serves to raise the stakes in the hunt for Marshall Brown. And a joint task force of local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies is formed to find the fugitive. A $5,000 reward is offered for information leading to his arrest.
There was a true fear that he was going to remain at large a while longer, and obviously there's a fear that he's going to take someone else's life.
Nance knows that one way or another, Brown's luck will eventually run out.
People can only stay on the run so long, no matter where they go.
In February of 1997, less than 2 months after the Calhoun murder, Nance gets a lead that puts him hot on the trail of Marshall Brown. An informant gives him a phone number for Brown's pager.
That's how people got a hold of him when they needed drugs or drug transactions.
Nance gets a court order to have Brown's pager cloned. That means whenever Brown is paged to make a drug delivery, Nance's clone pager receives the same message.
A number would show up, then you'd see a 911 beside of it, which we learned that someone needed drugs right then, in which Brown coming to that area or to that home.
In the spring of 1997, Nance intercepts a page directing Brown to a drug house in Statesville.
We had good information, which meant that we already secured search warrants for that property.
Nance and his team are at the address within minutes.
The adrenaline rush was extreme. You think this is going to be the time, that's where it's going to be, we're going to make a capture tonight?
After months on the hunt, Lieutenant Nance is ready to bring fugitive Marshal Brown to justice, but he could be leading his men into a firestorm. The gang members inside the house are probably well armed, and Brown's made it known that he won't go down without a fight.
So if we encountered Marshal Brown, it was probably going to be a shootout.
Nance and his men need to be ready for anything.
All right, ready? We're going in. All right, I'm on it.
Seems to be considered extremely dangerous, armed and dangerous.
The cops move fast to clear the house.
I've been in the business a long time, and you've yet to show me a safe way to look under a bed, in a closet, or stick your head through an attic door. It's just very dangerous, and you put yourself at risk each and every time you do it.
But Marshal Brown is nowhere to be found, and no one in the house is willing to talk.
Marshall made it point blank known to other people, if you snitch or rat me out or turn over on me, I will kill you and your family.
Nance uses the cloned pager for the next several months, responding to dozens of calls at all hours of the day and night.
I'd leave the house at night. My children would say, "Where are you going, Daddy?" I said, I've got to go look. I'm going to look for Marshal Brown. And they're like, "You got your vest on."
And while several drug dealers are arrested as a byproduct of the cloned pager operation, Marshal Brown somehow manages to stay one step ahead of the law.
I can relate dozens of times that I just felt confident, and like I said, we'd come up empty. It would amaze me at times. I'm like, he was so elusive. And it's disturbing.
It's Brown's well-developed sense of paranoia that helps keep him one step ahead of Nance's operation. He's always on the lookout for cops and spends at least an hour scoping out the area before entering a drug house. If something's not right, he'll hold off until things cool down.
Suspecting everything because you're trying to do everything you can not to get caught.
I don't want to make it sound less than it is, but it is a huge game of hide and seek. That's what it boils down to.
As the weeks roll by with no sign of Brown, police begin to suspect he's left the area. Then, Statesville Detective Tom Anderson gets a promising tip.
We got information from a bystander that they saw who they believed to be Marshal Brown in an area of South Statesville. And myself and this other investigator were a matter of 20 seconds away from that location.
Anderson and his partner rush to the location and confront the suspect.
We were professional yet direct in telling him how to show us his ID and lift up his shirt and make sure there were no weapons. My hand was on my weapon in case I needed it.
The suspect matches Brown's description. Right down to the yin and yang tattoo on his arm. But after a few tense moments, Anderson determines this isn't their man.
It makes the hair raise up on the back of your neck when you see someone, you think is who you're looking for.
Once again, sorry. Brown.
Anderson's not surprised to hear the man's been mistaken for Brown before. Since the Calhoun murder, Brown's face is all over the media, and both citizens and police are on the lookout for the fugitive.
We had ghost sightings all over town of Marshall Brown, and apparently we had a number of people that looked like Marshall Brown that were on the streets.
Anderson believes there must be someone in Statesville who can tell him where the real Marshall Brown is. Acting on a hunch, he decides to question Pamela Lewis, the woman seen arguing with Brown the night of the Calhoun murder.
Got the tag number, got us all the information we needed to track her back down.
Lewis admits that the dreadlocked man is indeed Marshall Brown. She tells Anderson she didn't know he was an escaped convict, and she has no idea where he's hiding out. But according to police, when Lewis leaves the station, she secretly meets with Brown and tells him the cops are on his trail. Then, Brown packs his bags, and Lewis drives him to the outskirts of Washington, D.C. Brown goes to D.C. to get off the cops' radar, but he can't seem to stay out of trouble. This time, he's on a drug run near the Virginia border when he loses track of his speed.
I don't know where the state trooper was, but he was, well, anyway, when I looked up him, got his thing on. I said, oh man, wow.
Brown pulls over and considers his options.
I'm staying calm, but I'm also calculating every move.
He's the subject of a statewide manhunt, carrying an illegal weapon and a package of cocaine. This state trooper is walking into a potentially lethal situation.
It's extremely dangerous for officers that do vehicle stops. It's a very large risk for him because oftentimes these individuals will shoot that officer the minute he appears in their driver window and then speed off.
I was going to do what I had to do to try to elude and evade to get away.
Brown grabs his MAC-10 off the seat and stuffs it under a coat.
I don't think Marshall Brown would hesitate if it became necessary to use deadly force against law enforcement.
But Brown would rather do this the easy way. His plan is to stay calm and use his charm to put the state trooper at ease. He figures if he plays his cards right, the officer won't know who he really is.
What I do is I forget about all what I got on me, and I try to find a common ground with him. It kind of like breaks the stern thing so that now he ain't so alert as he might should have been or whatever.
Unless an officer has reason to investigate further or something just appears out of the way, he's not going to interrogate every person he comes across, especially if someone's coming across in a positive manner.
When the state trooper asks to see a driver's license, Brown hands him a high-quality fake.
A fake ID is critical. It's something you got to have. It's very important.
The name, address, and license number belong to an innocent victim of identity theft. Only the photo is the real Marshall Brown.
You got to be able to stand up to an officer running it and it coming back clean.
The trooper has
right beside him, and I had a machine pistol under this big old coat and everything, and I'm like, ooh.
Brown plays it cool, and he keeps a close eye on the trooper.
I'm reading his facial emotions, I'm reading him, and seeing if it's working, because the only signs I got of something going wrong is him.
If he senses the situation turning bad, Brown plans to make a grab for the trooper's sidearm.
Had it turned to the worst, I'm pretty confident that I still could have controlled it without, having to hurt him. I'm thinking if I can just get this weapon out the middle of us, then I'm gonna let him go.
Brown's fake license comes back clean. The trooper hands him a speeding ticket and sends him on his way.
It was like, it was a relief, you know what I mean? That'd have been a bad situation. I'm glad it didn't happen though, because he was a pretty cool guy. I stay calm, he stay calm, and that's the whole thing about trying to stay free.
By the spring of 1998, Brown's managed to avoid capture for more than 2 years. But he's had several close calls, and his criminal activity keeps bringing him into contact with police.
What's going on, Corey? How you doing?
Brown decides it's time to quit the drug trade. Using an alias, he starts looking for more legitimate work.
That was part of his survival, is presenting a whole nother identification and projecting a whole nother image.
Brown moves into a D.C. neighborhood and gets steady work doing construction and remodeling.
I met a guy who had an apartment building, so he offered me work. And, of course, I used the alias name.
Brown stays out of trouble, but his past is about to catch up with him. July 21st, 1999. The Washington, D.C. FBI office gets a tip that an interstate fugitive named Marshall Brown is staying at an address on the northwest side of town.
First of all, you had to look and see who you're going after. In this case, this was an extremely dangerous fugitive. He didn't intend to go back to prison. He was going to fight till the end.
Jack Oler is a special agent with the Washington, D.C. field office back in 1999, when he's assigned to the Brown case.
We had information at that time that he may be working a job, and he may be coming and going during the day from that job.
The team stakes out the northwest D.C. address where they believe Brown is staying. Their plan? To grab Brown as he leaves for work. The element of surprise is crucial.
With Marshall Brown, we were prepared for...
The cops watch as an unidentified man parks his car and walks toward Brown's house.
Stand by. He walked up to the front porch of the residence. Brown came out. And we all recognized Brown. I mean, it was just like his photo.
The cops stand by for a signal to move in on the fugitive.
That's it, let's go. 10-4.
But Marshall Brown won't go easy. All hell is about to break loose.
Hands on your head! Hands on your head!
He was totally shocked, stunned, never moved a muscle. He was not armed.
After 3 years, 3 months, and 9 days on the run, Marshall Brown is finally in handcuffs.
I knew then I was caught, that there was no way to get away. It felt like a piece of crap, man. It felt like tears. For real, keep it real, tears.
Brown may be caught, but he's not finished fighting the police. He's about to make his most desperate attempt yet to avoid going back to prison.
Kill me!
He repeatedly, probably 6 or 8 times, said, "You're going to have to kill me today because I'm not going back to prison."
Shoot me! Shut up! Shoot me!
We all looked at each other like we had never seen this before. I mean, this guy is dead serious.
Down! Down!
I did not want to go back to prison alive. I'd rather be dead in a million burning hells if it's such thing.
Brown decides there's only one way out: suicide by cop. He figures if he attempts an escape, they'll be forced to shoot him.
I looked up in the sky and took a deep breath and prepared myself for what I thought was death, with the hopes that out of all them guns, somebody would jump the gun.
The cops give chase, but hold their fire. As Brown nears a busy intersection, Special Agent Oler tackles the fugitive and pulls him to the ground.
We both slid along the concrete pavement for about 10 or 12 feet, and we scraped our... Both came up with a bloody mess. He was still kicking. He was still trying to fight with his handcuffs on.
Marshall Brown is finally caught. Now he must face up to his own worst nightmare.
I wouldn't accept death. I just didn't want to accept coming back here. You know, and that was cheers.
Back in North Carolina, the news of Brown's capture is almost too good to be true.
At first, I didn't believe it. I wanted to verify that. I wanted to see a picture of him in handcuffs. We went through a lot of manpower, a lot of resources, a lot of overtime, a lot of help from a lot of different jurisdictions, but ultimately it paid off.
When an investigation goes on this duration, this period of time, 3 years, you live, eat, sleep the case. There's no other way around it. When I got the information that Marshall Brown had been captured in Washington, D.C., I felt my body relax, and it was like finally, closure. Put it to rest. He's where he needs to be.
Marshall Brown is brought before a North Carolina judge to stand trial for the murder of Stephen Calhoun.
No, put the gun down.
He agrees to plead no contest to a charge of second-degree murder, with the addition of an aggravating factor for the beating of David Brown. The judge orders a minimum sentence of 20 years. Even with good behavior, Marshall Brown won't be eligible for parole until 2022. He'll be 63 years old.
I think our communities are safer and better off. I think if he was on the outside again, that he wouldn't hesitate to take a life. I don't think Marshall Brown has changed as a person.
If Marshall Brown is held into prison and he stays in the system until 2025, Marshall Brown, if he's released at that time, considering his age, he may no longer at that time be a danger to society.
Yeah, if I had my life to do over again, I would do everything different. Everything.
Today, Marshall Brown is inmate 00-50673. Over the years, Brown's come to understand why he has to be here. But even so, he says he'll never stop wanting to get out.
I don't think nobody should be allowed to prey on society, but I don't think nobody want to be in prison. You know, I don't think nobody want to be in prison.